I'd have taken 2 pills if I was going
His heart is going bitter.
Two of you, I'd taken 2 pills at night.
He's surrounded by women.
We'll be there.
I am, I'm in it. Love it.
Yeah.
Who's called this meeting to order, Mr. Scanlon?
After 7 o'clock. At 7?
Yep.
All right. Time is 7 o'clock. Call our work session to order. We have one item on our agenda, and that is our street maintenance program. Mr. Scanlon has a few slides for us.
Correct. I have 5 slides. Then I have something on the whiteboard with the idea that once you get your streets to an acceptable level, then everything's in the street maintenance program. So the goal is to get everything in the city into the street maintenance program, not the street reconstruction program. So I go to my first slide. Part of having a street maintenance program is establishing administrative regulations for street maintenance. What's the PCI that we're trying to shoot for on average? Next, to review and rebalance the program annually. Probably the best thing to compare it to is our 10-year equipment replacement schedule, where each year when we do the budget, we look at it and we ask, can any of these equipment purchases be shifted or delayed, or are there important purchases that we need to make and have them brought into the current year? So part of having a street maintenance program is on an annual basis evaluating where we are in terms of the streets that we're maintaining. Are there some that we've put in out years that we should move up? Are there some that we currently have based on their condition, which could go another 2 or 3 years before we do anything with them? There's really 2 things that we try to do when you're maintaining streets. One is protection, and protection is crack sealing. It's basically taking those cracks that you see in the street and along the curb and making sure that they're filled in so that water doesn't permeate those cracks, get underneath the pavement, and that's what causes chuck holes and holes in the streets and the curbs to start peeling away. Then the next is rejuvenation, which is a seal coat, which extends the life of a street 5 to 7 years. So the idea is eventually you get all the streets in a condition, and there's 467 block segments in the city of Mission. And right now, this is how many would fall into our maintenance program. If you look at this map, these are all the ones that have a PCI greater than 70. And PCIs greater than 70 require just crack sealing and seal coating. So these are the streets that, when I come to you in a month, we'll start identifying which will be the streets that will be in the first year, the second year, the third year. And the idea is to try to get to all of these streets in a 5 to 7 year period so that they're maintained. A good example of slurry seal, if you want to know what slurry seal is, we slurry sealed 67th Street with Overland Park 3 years ago. And Overland Park just slurry sealed Lamar between 67th and 71st. And then I think they did the same between 71st and 75th on Lamar. So if you want to see what slurry seal looks like, it's a real thin coat of liquid asphalt that they put over the street. So the idea in our program is to eventually get every street into the street maintenance program. Now the part that we sometimes miss, and we need to do a better job at it, is basically explaining to people how we got here, because it seems like we got from zero to tough and everybody sort of forgot about all the steps in between. If you remember in 2007 we did a direction finder survey with ETC. These were the results. City planning efforts to promote redevelopment was number 1, and just 1% below that was maintenance of city streets, buildings, and facilities. Then below that, quality and livability of neighborhoods, overall flow of traffic and congestion. But streets were at the top. With that, we then put together a street inventory. It's one thing to say that we need to fix our streets, but what does fixing mean? What are the conditions that we have within our existing street system? So we went out and we actually rated all of our streets using PCI, which was actually created by the Corps of Engineers in terms of pavement conditions and its pavement condition indicator. And the rating is from 0 to 100% in terms of quality. The average for the city of Mission is 68.8%, with 58% of them being below that number. So the idea is that we're trying to improve the condition of the overall street. We then did some estimating of the costs in 2009. We took that inventory and said if we were to bring our streets up to a certain condition, and if we were to maintain the streets that we have so that they didn't fall into a poorer condition, how much would it cost? And that number came back, excluding cars, is somewhere between 20 and 25 million, or 15 and 20 million. Then we threw on car streets. Cars are major collectors. An example of major collector, Johnson Drive, Nall, Row, Martway, Broadmoor. Those are major collectors within our system. Fox Ridge, Squibb, those would be other examples of it. One of the things that I've been asked a number of times over the last 6 months is, how much have we been spending on streets historically, and what does it look like as we go forward in terms of if you take this street program that we're proposing. And this is sort of what the average annual street expenditures have looked like. $372,000 is what we spent on average 1990 through 99. 1.1 million in the last decade, and then 2.5 million. These are annual averages, with the idea that really we have a $38 million program. This doesn't include the 5 out years of cars nor the transit component. I just tried to identify it with streets so that it was an apples to apple comparison. When you get past the maintenance program, then you have to look at construction. Our construction is really 2 pieces. It's mill and overlay, and that would be the vast majority of our streets are mill and overlay. Complete reconstruction are a smaller portion, but it's the most expensive portion. And really the most expensive street segments that we have to maintain and reconstruct are Johnson Drive. And that's in part because of all the utilities that exist underneath Johnson Drive, and then all the connections that side streets make to Johnson Drive, as well as the stormwater that's both running across Johnson Drive and then goes underneath Johnson Drive. And we replaced a couple of those, if you remember, in the last year. One that was collapsing down there by the camera shop where the dip was. We actually replaced that portion of stormwater. So as it relates to construction, it's mill and overlay and complete construction. Some of these roads are cars eligible, like I said, and those are the ones that are going to be most expensive, and those are also the ones that we have the most outside funds available to us. Kind of in the big summary, because I'm going to try to do this very
Mike?
shortly.
Let me ask you a question before you
Sure.
go on. That top one, how secure is that 6 million as far as the federal or the Tiger program goes? I mean, is that an absolute certainty we're going to get 6 million, or is that just the talk that's there now?
And that 6 million is absolute certainty, and that's why we stop at 2014.
Okay,
Most of that money has been appropriated, and it's actually been sent either to the states or to an agency to administer. As you start looking past 2014, and if you're just paying attention to sort of what's happening both in Washington and Topeka, it is real hard for KDOT to tell you what it's going to look like in terms of their contribution to the SDP program, because that money actually filters through Topeka, from Washington to Topeka, back to Mark. So 2014, we're pretty certain about. Beyond 2014, my guess is, depending on how the federal budget is reconstructed and how the state budget is reconstructed, I can't tell you what's going to happen after that. But Johnson Drive's been identified and funded, as well as Nall and Martway and Broadmoor, because we got Broadmoor using Tiger money. So my big wrap up is the street maintenance program is our top priority. The more of these we can maintain, the more of these green streets that we can extend the life, the less expensive it will be for us in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 15 years. In the spring, we will bring a 2011 construction project schedule, and that will be residential streets. And really the best way to look at this is, and I wrote it on the board right underneath, because this is really the best way to think of it. We have 3 parts with the goal that everything that we do moves our streets into maintenance mode. So as you do construction in residential, it moves into maintenance. So let's say it gets, a residential street gets milled and overlaid. Within 3 to 5 years, you want to be back seal coating that so that you can continue to extend the life. And the same is true for car streets. When we come back with sort of our street maintenance program, you're going to see that in year 2, we will actually be slurry sealing Johnson Drive, Row to Knoll in order to maintain that pavement condition, because it will have been down for 5 years, and if we slurry seal it, we can extend the life of that street another 5 to 7 years. So the idea is to get everything up to, let's say, when you rebuild something, it's 100%, and once you get it up to that high level, what you want to try to do is maintain it in that range of 70 to 80, which means it stays in this green region, and the more streets that you can keep in that green region, the cheaper it is to maintain the streets in the long term. And that's really all I had.
Mike, what are the blocks of red on the map? These little squares. Is that anything significant?
Those are tennis courts.
On the track.
And a track.
This is just the maintenance street. These aren't our other streets.
Correct. And the good news is we have a lot that are, if we can get on them and maintain them, we have a large number of our residential that will be able to continue to extend the life. The one thing that we do have concerns about are sidewalk and curb replacement. We really don't show that as part of this program, but we need to start identifying those sidewalks and curbs that need to be replaced. And you do those segments at a time, and probably the best place to see that is Prairie Village. Just go south of 63rd Street and you can actually see it on Row, where they've done sections of street and sections of sidewalks and sections of curbs. So you actually start identifying as part of your annual rejuvenation and protection program how to replace curbs and sidewalks at the same time. When I come back, you're going to see that we're going to target specific areas so that you don't have mobilization costs, so that you're not moving a contractor all over the city. It will likely be centered west of Woodson, south of 55th, and extend all the way over to roughly Riggs would be the first block. And then with mill and overlay, what we're going to try to do is that piece of Knoll that's north of Johnson Drive. Roland Park has done most of Knoll, but there's a section that wasn't done to bring that in. And then the streets that are around Script Pro, in terms of if you've been around Script Pro. Part of that's been caused by when they were reconstructing or constructing buildings. Part of it is that those streets are just old and haven't been replaced or maintained. And they're a valuable employer, and they've paid a lot in taxes, and it would seem to be a worthwhile investment. And then it would line up, hopefully, with then getting Johnson Drive.
Would you tell us again which, it's south of 55th, west of
Woodson
Woodson?
to Riggs. So it's going to be primarily Ward 2 and 3.
Okay. And you hope to do the curbs and the sidewalks at the same time?
To identify those places where we can do a curb and sidewalk program. The crack seal we can do with our own crews. The slurry seal we do with outside vendors. Our hope would be, having talked with Overland Park, that we actually bid our streets as part of their package so that we can get a really good price, because they do a lot more streets. And I would say they've slurry sealed somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 lane miles in the last 4 years. It's pretty expansive what they've done, but there's still 100 lane miles behind or whatever.
And to clarify, Mike, the maintenance program, the slurry seal coat, which would be an outside contract, is in the 2011 budget. So that's already been taken care of. And then the construction stuff that you're talking about is also in the 2011 budget, and we'd be looking at a contract for that as well.
Mm-hmm.